Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Property Experts podcast with me, Ben Richards, and Jack Jiggins. We are at a later time tonight of 9:15 on a Friday. We had some meetings that ran on at sort of 4 till 5 till 6 this afternoon, so we've pushed things till later. And actually, the meeting that ran over was something that we have been doing in the social housing space, and we're going to be talking about that as one of the points today. So I'm going to be sharing the types of things that we get up to in that sector. It started as a side hustle that turned into a £20 million side hustle. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that whole process and how we run supported living. And as you can see, it's top of the agenda today on the 25th of October, 2024. Hot topic, supported living housing. I keep seeing it all over social media. Everyone's wanting to get into the space. We've been in it for 4 years, building over 120 beds, and we're going to be giving you the rundown of how that strategy works, and see if it might be of something of interest for you to get into as well. We are recruiting across the board, so we're going to be talking about the latest in our growing teams and how they're looking to grow even further. Number 3, we've instructed some new strategies on one of our sites. So Offplan Sales is something we've not done before, and we're going to be talking you through how that process is hopefully going to work for one of our development projects. I did a talk for the developer club earlier this week, and within that talk I talk about my top 10 design tips for your property developments. I learned a lot from the Berkeley group, and we push all of that design knowledge into our schemes to really sweat the asset, maximize and optimize potential. And I'm going to be giving you my top 10 tips how you can take these actionable steps away into your own property developments and make more bottom line profit ultimately. We've been in the Blue Bricks magazine. We're going to be giving you an overview of what that was all about. And then Jack has a huge amount of value to add this week. I mean, every other week, Jack comes back from his Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business sessions with, huge amount of learning, quite intensive training around business and business management and how to improve your businesses. And he's sharing all of those tips and tricks and things to look out for in these sessions as well. And then, as always, we've got our Q&A. Cool. So supported living, social housing, it is so hot right now. Everyone seems to be talking about it, and it's certainly something that is on the manifesto for the new Labour government, bringing in lots of money into the space. I think the last time we checked, the list for general needs housing in the UK is now 1.3 million people long. That's a long list. And of that, there are also a huge percentage of people that need extra care. So supported living generally, for those that don't understand the space, can involve all different types of tenure of person, but fundamentally the space that we operate in is where extra care is provided to those tenants. So the tenant type is often people with special educational needs, people with disabilities, people with out of sort of ex-domestic violence victims, ex-military looking to get back into sort of working normal life. And the whole point of it is that it's a transitional type of housing where people come out of hardship, get help and care and support and a house over a roof over their head to transition them back to mainstream living, teach them all about the types of bills that they might have to pay, help them with their CVs, give them any sort of special care and support that they might need. Anything I've missed, Jack?
Yeah, I was just actually going to touch on from obviously that's what actually is happening on the ground, but more from like an investment perspective and what we do and what we have seen in the market. So a lot of social housing or supported living that I've seen is where people have HMOs. They don't want to deal with the day-to-day management, and then they let it out to local councils or charities for normally on a 5-year fully internal repairing lease. Ours is slightly different because we actually acquire the assets similar to HMO landlords, but these large buildings that are purpose converted from, it might be an old care home or even a very large HMO to what we would call semi-self-contained studios. And then it would be a much longer lease, sometimes in excess of 10 years on a full repairing lease. There's also providers out there that do lease and lease back. So they lease the building and then lease it back out to a social housing provider. That's not really our bag. Anything contractual has never really been our bag. We've always been in the real estate and bricks and mortar game. And that's more what we do. So as a result of that, we should hope that we have less management on a full repairing lease with a registered housing association in situ, but that's definitely not been the case, and why we're spending 2 hours on calls with the operator. But I just thought it would be good to distinguish what people are doing in the market. So I've seen huge social housing portfolios scale, massively, like blocks of 100, for an example, but that will be where they take out a lease. They then agree a lease with an RP or a council or whatever it may be that's shorter than the lease that they have agreed. So it sort of reflects and marries up to the same lease that they have agreed. And it's purely a cash flow model from that perspective. So they might make 50 quid per bed per week, for an example, on that particular lease. But we own our sites. So we ride all of the highs and lows of capital appreciation, risk of tenancies, refinancing them, and all of that sort of drama. And it's super hot right now. But if anyone that has been operating in the space knows that most of this stock is valued on an investment valuation, and as of late, and interest rates going up, it's become more difficult to get good values for it. This stuff was trading between 5 and 6% 4 years ago. I'd be very impressed if you got anywhere near there at this current moment in time. So it's currently not as hot as I think it is currently made out to be, and I actually prefer a private social HMO portfolio if I'm quite frank. But that's my opinion. And
yeah, I think we've been through the ringer, haven't we, with our portfolio. It can be very, very hands off and hassle free, but in our case, it really hasn't. We've had one registered social landlord that we had our leases with basically have a winding up petition served against them. We had to jump ship from them to another provider, and it was sort of out of the frying pan into the fire. It's not been a smooth ride with the second provider that we're now currently with. So it does come with its difficulties. Like Jack says, the main strategy for us had always been to grow and scale aggressively. So what we were trying to do is sort of arbitrage the yield. So effectively build a portfolio, buy the assets, refurbish, add value, put them on a 10 to 25 year lease with a housing provider, and start to really grow the number of units that we own. We've made it to sort of 120 units plus, actually. Between sort of, actually I think it's 135 between like us and some of our partners that we've delivered on behalf of. But the idea was to grow that portfolio to a certain size. And what we've learned is that certain size, if you want to then sell the portfolio on more of a compressed yield to a fund or a pension fund or a REIT or something like that, they don't generally get out of bed for £50 million or less. So we've been trying to grow. Well, we started off growing that portfolio to try and get to that size. And when you're at that size, you sort of get a more of what's sort of considered a compressed yield. So let's say one asset in its entirety, 10-bed HMO on a 10-year lease to a housing provider, might have a yield valuation of, let's say, 7.5%, for example. When you amalgamate 10 of those and you've got 100 units then all under one route, all under one kind of strategy stroke portfolio, that 7.5% yield might compress down to a 6% yield because it's all in one place. There's better value in scale, and then you can sell that portfolio at a higher value when it's sort of amalgamated into a larger size. So that's been the goal. It hasn't been that straightforward. We've got a certain scale. Like I say, our portfolio is about £20 million now. But to get it to the sort of scale that we would have wanted to and sell it to a REIT, we need to kind of keep going and get that up to about 50 million. So yeah, watch this space. It's a really interesting place to be. If you're involved in it, let us know down below. Let us know what areas you operate. We'd love to pass notes and understand what you guys are doing. But if you've got any questions about it, make sure you drop them in the comments below, and hopefully we can get to them at the end of the show. Cool. Recruitment update. we have now secured the CAD technician within XP Surveys. That's not to say we won't be looking for more anytime soon. So if you are a CAD technician, you're an architect, or you know someone that's looking to move into a surveyor and a CAD technician role, do get in touch. I just wanted to touch on the fact that a guy called Matteo has joined Aura Architecture this week, started Monday. Really excited about having him on board. Really wants to get stuck in and has got some really good experience with sustainability, and that is an area that Aura want to go into. And XP Property are still looking to bring on board an office and estate manager. So if you're interested in working for a really dynamic team, you know, Jack and I have 25 people between the businesses that we run. Everyone says when we do their reviews, what do you like most about working with us? And it is the team, because it is a great place to be, great place to work. Lots of really interesting stuff happening, and we need somebody that can be in the office, manage the estate and the portfolio that we are actively growing, and someone that can come in, slot in, and free up a lot of Jack and I's time. Cool. Point number 3, instructing off-plan sales. We've never done this. It is definitely something that is new for us going forward. It's a bit of a risk, I would say, on our behalf, but we see it as a bit of almost a free spin, and I'm just going to explain why that might be. We have instructed a company to come on board now. We are building the old maltings, which is the image that you can see on the right hand side. That is a nice CGI of how our scheme is hoping to look. It's 21 flats and 2 houses, and we will be delivering that. PC should be sort of June next year. So we are now in October, so we've got effectively the best part of 7-8 months. And, whilst we are during the construction process, we have decided to bring on board a sales specialist that effectively sells off-plan to investors. They could be UK-based investors, they could be overseas investors, but effectively they have a 12-week contract to package up. Well, initially there'll be a lead-in time to that 12 weeks, but effectively for the next 4 to 5 weeks, they will be pulling together all of these sales particulars, CGIs, marketing, all of the material to package that into a brochure, launch it to their database, launch it to their overseas introducers. And effectively the idea is that we get 18 of our 23 units sold before we even get to PC, which would be an absolutely remarkable job. They're confident they can do it. They've just sold a 65 unit scheme down in Gravesend within 9 weeks, off plan. And the benefits for us is that effectively by come February time next year, if we can lock up 18 sales, the benefit of utilizing a company like this is that instead of just a 10% deposit, which is fairly standard when you exchange, they take a 20 to 25% deposit and hold 10% in escrow with the solicitor, but the other 10 to 15% can be released to us as the agent. So from a cash flow perspective, that is huge for this site. That could be a cash flow injection of £400,000 that can contribute to the construction costs, reduce our finance costs, and just bring some funding into the business earlier than waiting until sort of PC. A bit of a gamble for us. We've not done it before. But the reason I say it could be a free spin is that come February time, we still haven't finished. We've still got 3 months to actually get the project over the line. And if they haven't done a good job by February time, we can bring in a local agent and just run the sales process as we normally would have done anyway. So yeah, watch this space. We'll see how it goes. But fundamentally, that is the process. And we shall, proof's in the pudding, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose anyone tuning in sort of December, January time will hear progress on sales.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. So I seem to be speaking a lot on this one. You got your Goldman Sachs coming up. So
I'm taking the second half. So I've been
take the second half.
And you crack on with
it. Cool. So point number 4. This is Ben's top 10 design tips for your developments. And a little story, I guess, for those that haven't heard this. So I used to work for the Berkeley Group. When I joined working on one of the projects, it's an 8-year program in 9 Elms, Vauxhall. And when I got involved, there was planning approval for a development of 836 units. So 12 blocks, 27 stories down to about 10 stories being the smallest. Big infrastructure project, double basements, gym, sauna, spa, all that good stuff that the Berkeley Group used to do. Now, part of that 6-month process, part of the first 6-month process that I worked on with the architects, the structural engineers, all of the design team, was to optimize the scheme, trim the fat, improve, sweat the asset, optimize as much as possible. And we took that scheme from 836 units to 955 units in a paperwork exercise without extending the building envelope. So if you imagine you've got the same building footprint, the same envelope, you're not extending anything more, you're just utilizing what was approved previously, but you're optimizing the scheme, sweating the asset, and we got effectively £100 million worth of value out of that process on paper. So how did we do that? The sorts of things that I'm about to run through explain some of those things and how we actually utilize the learnings from that process into our own developments. And you can take these things away, hopefully, to improve the way that you sweat your assets, optimize your schemes, and effectively get more profit on the bottom line. So what are they? They're on screen at the moment for those that can see on YouTube and all the other places. And I'm going to go run through these in greater detail in a separate presentation, but just very quickly. Top tip number 1, creating efficient floor plates. That's maximizing your gross saleable space, basically, of each floor plate by reducing stair cores, squeezing hallway spaces, and doing anything you can to just remove any dead space. Regularization, that means taking bathrooms, shower rooms, utility rooms, making them as regular as you possibly can throughout every flat, so that every tiler that goes into your bathrooms knows that you've got only 2 different types. He does one, he learns how to do it faster, he doesn't have any issues, he learns any issues on the first one and can just roll them out on the rest of the property. Amending ceiling heights can make a huge difference. In the 27-story tower that we had in the Berkeley Group scheme that I worked on, if you take 100 millimeters off of your ceiling height and squeeze your structural slab down by an extra 100 millimeters, gaining 200 millimeters on each floor, each 27 floors, gains you 5.5 meters overall. That's enough to add 2 extra floors on top. And that's what we did. Every floor was 6 flats. So we gained an extra 12 flats in that 27 tower by just being more lean and more, clever, I guess, with the actual ceiling heights that we had within that envelope. Number 4, changing the development mix. So utilizing, understanding what's best in what location. So rearranging a 2-bed in one part of the building that has the best views, as opposed to having 2 2-beds that might be lower value. Maximizing instead of a 3-bedroom flat, maybe changing that to 1 2-bed and 1 1-bed. So just rearranging the development mix to suit the scheme. And we've come unstuck with one of our schemes recently where the planners wouldn't allow us to get the development mix and the type of scheme that we wanted, and it's really hurt us. We wanted to get an extra flat in the loft space at Sunset Court, but the planners wouldn't have it. So we had to end up with 2 large 3-beds, 1 split level 3-bed duplex, which is overpriced for that area and not really the type of finished asset that we wanted. So, sometimes the planners get in the way, but you should be looking at maximizing how that development mix is suited, whether it's 1-beds, 2-beds, 3-beds. External facelifts can have a massive impact on the overall saleability and curb appeal of your properties. Don't overlook storage, because it is key. Utilizing changes of use. Obviously, there's a lot of permitted development rights now that help you do that. So, try to understand those permitted developments, understand the nuances, use them where you can. It really does help you maximize efficiency. Always have a focus on customers, on the end customer. The Berkeley Group were very keen that they created products, that what they created was a product. It wasn't a property, it was a product. It has to be customer focused. And you have to basically cater to the customer's needs to sell faster and sell high. Amenity space, certainly since the pandemic, private amenity space is so fundamental for every property that you have. You should try and factor that into every unit that you possibly can. It's not always possible. Where you can, you absolutely try and should. And then Point number 10, which I think is most important, that's why it's big and in red, challenge your architect and your consultants. I was probably the little 3-year-old boy in the Berkeley Group design team meetings that just constantly having his hand up. Why are we doing that? Why are we doing it? Yes, but why? Yes, but why? Yes, but why? And ultimately, after about 3 times of asking that, you often found that your engineer sort of sat back and said, yeah, okay, we can do that. Okay, well, why didn't you do that first time round? And that's the sort of, that's where you need to get to. You need to be really, really pushing your design consultants and really challenging what they do. Cool. So I've got a sort of presentation where I can go through a few more of those things in finer detail and show you how we've managed to do these and put these into practice in some of our Aura schemes and also in some of the XP schemes that we've worked on, and that's just going to have to do. Cool. So efficiency in floor plates. And what I mean by that is basically creating and removing lots of wasted dead space. So you can see on this left-hand image, for those that are looking on YouTube, there are huge cycle stores internally, huge utility and plant rooms, a massive entrance hallway, which looks to be about 3 meters wide. I mean, that's just an absolute huge waste of space. So try and streamline the communal space as much as you possibly can and make it as small as it doesn't need to be any bigger than it needs to be from a sort of compliance perspective. You might want to put a slightly nicer hallway in somewhere in some locations, but certainly not 3 meters wide and certainly not in a block of 9 flats that this was. So you can see that you've got 2 flats that are only about 50 square meters, but by reducing the stair calls, being a little bit more clever in terms of how that communal space looks, we managed to take a 50 square meter flat and turn it into a 69 square meter flat, which is a good size 2-bed effectively from a 1-bed. Those that are BDI'd of you and really sort of either pause the screen to look at these will notice that the floor plans on the right hand side are actually a HMO. So this particular client that came to us as a HMO investor, they were looking to hold these assets. So we were trying to optimize for bedrooms as opposed to optimizing for sort of saleable flats. So yeah, that will be why it's sort of organized that way. But the crux of it is that we've gone from 50 square meters to 69 square meters without extending the building. We're just utilizing the space internally far better. And this all comes down to increasing your NIA to GIA ratio. So a good efficiency for a block of flats might be somewhere between 85 and 90%. When we took our St Andrew's Court Tame project on the office conversion, I think the original architect designed it at about 73% efficiency. So that's 27% basically of wasted space. You need to have stair calls, you need to have communal areas, but fundamentally, if you're designing something efficiently, somewhere around 85 to 90% is a good place to aim for. So if you're pushing your architects, throw that figure at them, make sure that they are being really conscious and clear as to what the NIA versus GIA ratio is, and then drive them down where you can. So how have we used that in practice? This is a project that we sort of joint ventured on down in Canterbury. On the right hand side in the image that you see on the screen is a previous architect that sort of they were working with. We took over the scheme, utilized a lot of the points that I mentioned in my top 10 design tips. We really increased the NIA versus GIA ratio, stripped down a lot of the stair cores and wasted space. We regularized and standardized the bathrooms. So if you look at this bathroom here, which is circled, what is that? I mean, you can fit 2 bathrooms in that space. It's absolutely huge. All of the units and sanitary areas like bunched up into one side, and it's just not a very good efficient use of space. So that's something that we would regularize straight away. My bathrooms are typically 1700 by 21 in width, 1700 in terms of the length of a bath, and then 21 width is enough to get bath, toilet, sink side by side and still have quite a lot of space available. Sometimes I'll increase that to 1900 by 2100, where the 200 mil extra is effectively the void behind the units for niches to hide all of your ductwork, to recess, semi-recess sinks, and sort of make it feel a lot more, a little bit more luxurious. My bathrooms are typically, my shower rooms, if they're arranged like that, are 2.1 meters in width, in length. And then effectively the minimum I'd go down to is probably 1,200 for a shower tray in terms of the width of that shower room. But we generally have a standardized 4 or 5 different types of bathrooms and shower arrangements, and we replicate that in most of our schemes. You'll see on the next page how we amended ceiling height. So we reduced some of the upper level floors to get an extra floor in the roof space. And this is something that we always look to do in, the old Maltings is a classic example of that, where we've added over £500,000 worth of value by utilizing loft space, putting in an extra floor, getting Velux windows in the roof, maybe adding some dormers, and adding some extra value in those voids and volumes. We changed the development mix. So, we took some 3 beds, made a 2 bed and a 1 bed, or just played around with how that mix looked. If you can sneak a 1 bed into a 2 bed by gaining back some of that communal space, for example, that's a great way of also adding value. And then fundamentally, this was a change of use. So this utilized permitted development to convert the upper levels of this retail space into residential flats. So December 2019 was when we looked at this first time round. The GDV was 1.15 million based on the 5 units that the previous architect had designed. This is the sort of sketches that we came up with to kind of optimize and maximize the space. You can see a section on the right hand side where we've lowered floors to get an extra floor into the roof space. We took it up to 6 units because of those changes, took the GDV up to 1.34 million, increased the profit margin by 16%, again by just, that's a paperwork exercise, just looking at optimizing the space, getting a 16% increase in profit margin. And then later, as we developed the scheme even further, we realized we could get more additional space up in the rear section of the building, up in the loft. We had a proper measured survey to work to. You can see it's gone from kind of sketch level to CAD layers, CAD drawings, where we've actually got proper measurements, and we can add even more value. So we've gone from 5 units to 6 units to 7 units at a £1.48 million GDV. Ultimately we took the projected profit on the project from £240,000 to £410,000 with that paperwork exercise. So a 72% increase in profit margin by running that process, getting your architects, getting your design consultants to really squeeze as much value out of it as possible. This project is for a huge scheme in Croydon, which I absolutely love, and it's almost finished. So I do need to get to site to actually see how this one has panned out. But ultimately, the site came to us with planning approval for a conversion to 6 units. Now, they were massive units and they were oversized, and you could have squeezed, probably 10 out of them, to be honest. But it came to us with 6. But we realized by amending ceiling heights, digging down only about 1,200 millimeters into the ground, you can actually get an extra sort of split level mezzanines in there, extra net saleable area. We took those 6 units, oversized units, adding the mezz spaces, digging down a little bit in the basement to 16 units. Basically, that added £1 million worth of value to our clients in that particular project. And not only that, did we get planning approval for a block of 8 flats, which you can see on screen. And then the cream on the top was actually, I think, after once they started the works, they actually managed to go back in and get an extra bungalow in this part of the site as well. So from what was 6 units approved when they bought the site to effectively 25 units by the time they got through to construction. Other ways is, I mentioned changing use. So this is something we did in the business box in Reading, which used to be effectively like a storage unit for bride and groom dresses and tailoring and things like that. So effectively we bought it as storage at £8 a square foot, turning that into an office space and just changing the use took us up to £22 a square foot. And then with offices like this, it was about 3,500 square feet of space. We chopped it up into smaller pods of 350 to 600 square feet. And that actually ramped up the price per square foot significantly from the £22 a square foot if we let it as one big office to £30 to £40 a square foot is what we actually achieved in rental values by chopping it up into the smaller pods. Facelifts are always great to increase curb appeal, adding little porches and changing the textures and the materials of the properties. We did this really successfully with the police office project in Sonning Common, increasing the curb appeal, increasing the value of those assets. And then one of the really sort of big things that I learned at the Berkeley Group, talking about kind of being customer focused, is top golden tip, basically not getting your hand wet when you turn on your shower. That was a pet peeve of mine. It's something that we try to do in every scheme that we do now. So nobody wants to reach into the shower, turn on the shower valve, get wet hand, have to dart out the way really quickly. Your shower valve should be in a position where you can reach them without getting your hand wet. That was always one of the golden rules at the Berkeley Group. I was asked for more of those actually at the TDC, and the only other one I could think of off the cuff was that they always had 2 door hooks on the back of a bathroom door, so his and hers bathrobes effectively could be put on there. But the way I described it to them, and the way that the Berkeley Group always sort of thought about their properties, was very similar to Apple. When you get an Apple phone, an iPhone, you just know it works. It's intuitive. You don't really ask many questions. You just turn it on and kind of how to use it because it's super user friendly. What the Berkeley Group are very good at doing is, you move into a house and you don't have those niggles. You don't have this, why is that in this place, or why does that look like that? Because most of the time, everything's been thought through. Everything's been thought through in terms of how the space is used. And I take pride of the fact that I've had those sort of similar comments from agents of some of the stuff that we've sold. Agents have walked in and they can see how the thought process has gone into how the rooms are laid out and the spaces are arranged and all that sort of stuff. And I just think it's so important. It's I want people to move into our flats and not question anything, because if they're not questioning anything and they can just live their lives and enjoy living there, you've done a really good job in creating a house that's of value to them. So have a real customer focus on what you do. And I skipped storage, sorry. That there are space standards around how much storage you need to provide, but everyone has loads of shit nowadays. You need to create some tailored and dedicated storage for people to use. And then in this day and age, private amenity, huge. We are installing things like balconies, terraces, and sort of courtyard gardens in a lot of our schemes where we can. Most of those balconies, for example, probably add 15 to 20 grand to our house values. It costs us probably £6,000 to £8,000 to install a lot of those. You're almost doubling or trebling the value that you can get from getting those approved at planning. So private amenity is huge. Cool. That's it. If you've got any questions about adding value to your developments through design, very just quickly, point number 1, efficient floor plates, regularization, amending ceiling heights, changing the development mix, giving it an external facelift, utilizing storage, changing the use, having a real focus on customers and what they need, amenity space, and then to challenge your architect and consultants. And there you have it.
I suppose anyone can just put that down as a checklist to make sure that they've ironed that off in each of their schemes.
Yeah. Cool.
Feel like we've got 3 agendas today. The opening one, that one, and my one.
Yeah. The rest are just infills. Speaking of that, if you're enjoying the Property Experts podcast, please do rate us on Spotify, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We really do hope that people get value from this. And if you are getting value, please do share it with just one person, because that will go a long way to sharing the knowledge.
One thing I was going to ask our listeners is actually share your wins. If you take anything away from these podcasts and you put it into practice in your business or on a project, we'd love to hear your wins and sort of hear that what we're sharing is useful.
Yeah. Cool.
I think we're on to the magazine feature.
Yeah.
Shall I take this one? So, we got a thumbs up from someone I like online, Julia Hart. Hello, Julia. So we were very fortunate to feature in the Bluebricks magazine. Sam, we had a chat with him actually at his event up north, at the awards event where we were nominated for our social housing portfolio, and sort of said, you guys need to come on a podcast, an interview, which we did. So if anyone hasn't heard of Bluebricks magazine, it's an independently run magazine, and I actually read the article earlier today and thoroughly enjoyed it. Super user friendly as well to work my way around the article and to read the bits. But we go through in the interview about how we started, how we met, what people get wrong about partnerships, which is an interesting topic. What is the business ecosystem in our business? What is in motion, the future of the ecosystem, and what the benefits that a business might have if you have sister companies. We talked about loads of things, to be fair. How do you know it's time to launch a business? That's a good question. But all of this features in the article. So thanks, Sam, for putting us in there. I'd highly recommend anyone that doesn't read Blue Bricks, check it out. And there's a really good article in this month, so you won't be disappointed.
Nice. I did actually last Friday go to his property and pigeons networking event. So we did some laser pigeon shooting in a beautiful sort of hotel, castle, whatever you want to call it, in the arse end of nowhere. To be honest, it was a long trek. And when I asked him why he picked there, he was like, he lives about a 3-hour drive from it, and didn't really know why he chose that place. I think because it was just a nice venue, and yeah, I don't know, but anyway, it got quite a few people there. It was a really good networking event. He does do them quite regularly, so keep an eye out for those. And he's also got some really exciting things planned for the actual magazine. I don't know if I should be saying it, but it'll come out regardless anyway. But he's going to be creating some of these articles into sort of audio format. So for those that, I know that I don't get the chance every now and again to like pick up one of those magazines and chill out sitting down reading them. Whereas if I could just scan a QR code or log into something to just play all of the articles in audio format, I think that's something that not many people do. So yeah, hopefully he's going to be launching that soon. But if you're not following Sam, if you're not sort of following what Blue Bricks are up to, the awards last year were incredible. It was in this place actually that you can see on the screen, massive castle. I mean, it was just such a beautiful place, and the whole event was was really great fun. So yeah, do check Sam out and check the Blue Bricks magazine out as well.
Cool.
Over to you. What have you learned?
My agenda now. Have you got your notepad and pen?
Ready and raring.
There is some good bits in this one. So for those of you not aware, I'm enrolled and I'm studying business growth at Oxford Uni, split across Oxford and Aston University, on the Goldman Sachs small business growth programs. What that is I applied. It's very competitive, and it's only for people that want to scale their businesses. And it's basically like the easiest way to describe it is a condensed MBA. But you're not learning about all these big corporates and their marketing campaigns where they have billions to spend and they're trying to be controversial. It's all about you and your business, and every single thing that you do and learn is for you to grow your own business, and you use your own business as a business case study. I've got to submit my first draft of my business plan next Friday. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me over the next week or so. But I wanted to share, we had a face-to-face residential in Oxford, and I wanted to share some top tips for you. For our listeners out there, you will have to some degree put your property hat down and put on your business hat, which I think is probably slightly more important out of the two. The property is just the vehicle, but obviously the business is the journey, and it's all about making those incremental changes so that you can grow and improve your business, make it more sustainable, make it grow without you, and so on and so forth. So I think I've got, 7 tips and things that I learned over the last couple of days. This is like tip of the iceberg. My notebook's full and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we'll kick on with dashboard. So starting with dashboard, they teach you in the course that whatever you're planning on doing, whether it's designing a building and you're talking about Ben's percentage efficiency, or whether you're trying to boost more deals in your pipeline, you should always have a dashboard to monitor that. Because what's monitored gets measured, and what's measured creates success. So they're always banging on about whatever you're trying to achieve. You might be, for an example, a HMO management landlord, and you're trying to hit certain room rates and certain void rates. Build that dashboard in for yourself so you have an intuitive sort of sheet in front of you to track how you're progressing in certain areas, and to quickly monitor areas that are falling by the wayside, but also quickly monitor growth and understand why there's growth, and sort of double down in those areas where there is. So a dashboard for your particular KPIs, that might even be, P&L, that might even be a balance sheet, that might even be how many deals you got offers out in this month, that might be, it's essentially KPIs, key performance indicators, but not necessarily just from an admin and to make sure that you're doing things, but also to feed you information about the business or the task that you're doing at your desk. And I highly recommend that you do that with your team as well. Ben, ready for the next one? So next is AI, and we had the last talk of the 2 days, and I was like almost falling asleep because I was so tired until this guy came on stage, and it absolutely blew my mind away. But basically, I asked him, well, so I think someone or myself asked him at the end of the lecture, what is his top tip for AI at the moment? And he basically said, be really careful around copyright, because a lot of people are making videos with other people's IP, and quite frankly, they can't necessarily do that. So he gave us a clear example, which is where someone has made a Muppets video out that's like the Muppets, but in Mad Max. And he sort of said, who owns this? Is it Mad Max and their franchise? Is it the Muppets and their franchise? Is it the person who created it on the AI platform? So just to sort of pre-warn anyone out there, particularly video editing and using AI to video edit, the top tip, this guy who's like top of his game in an AI, basically said, make sure you're closely guarding what you're creating, because it might actually be someone else's intellectual property, which would fall into the UK standards of copyright if someone else owns that IP and you're using it. So what that might look in practice is if you go on a video editor platform and you say, here's a video of me, can you snippet some bits of B-roll in between of random people, random sites, drone footage. You don't actually know where they've gathered all of that data and information and video video stuff. So you could be liable for copyright infringement. And he said there's loads of copyright cases going forward, and it's kind of like the new thing, because everyone freely thinks that we're in a world where you can create anything. And you don't need to do anything. You don't need to go and shoot it in front of a property. You don't need to film yourself at home. You can create anything out of anything. And he said it's currently sort of finding its place legally, because there's a lot of IP that is owned by people that you shouldn't really be using stuff. And I mean, I'm referring to mostly stuff like, for an example, people have made a video of like Donald Trump riding a donkey. He could sue if he allocated the person that's created that, or the person that's owning that and sharing that. There could be a sue case there. So that's the one bit of advice that this guy that specializes in AI gave us.
Was he American or was he UK based?
UK based.
Yeah, cool. I know it's a big thing.
Apparently the UK have a really good footing for like AI and artificial intelligence. Apparently we're ahead of most of the curve, which is good.
Interesting.
Cool. This one's a little bit boring, but I thought it'd be relative to share. We had a talk about sustainability, and I'm not talking about sustainability as PV panel. Well, I mean, obviously it's related, but PV panels, air source heat pumps, EPCs improvements, MEES assessments, and things like that. I'm talking about your business and how your business operates. And this really did make me think, actually, specifically more so for our surveying business. So we were fed all of this information of where the world is going. And, I'm talking about the public sector are hoping for net zero targets by 2050. We're talking about procurement policies in the public sector to procure goods that are actually practicing sustainable activities. And what I mean by that is, let's just assume we're a surveyor, and Westminster Council want us to survey their building. If we cannot show our value chain of what we're buying, resourcing, how our team are getting there, and our carbon footprint, we might not get that instruction. So the reason that this is really imperative to think about as a company is, in years to come, that is going to be the obvious question that they're going to be asking. Where can you share your existing carbon footprint? Can you share how you're actually working towards a better target than most? And it's all about changing your mindset to start thinking about incremental improvements, even if it's 1% a year, to be more efficient. Basically being a sustainable business. And that could be something as simple. So for an example, Central Suites is actually a completely paperless company. It was something that we bought almost anyway, and we decided, it doesn't make much difference to try and be a completely paperless company. So from all the way through construction, obviously there's documents we have to sign legally, but I'm actually talking about the journey between construction and letting. So all of our tenants, not one of them has ever seen any paper from us at all, that they've had to sign, give back, put it in the bin, whatever it may be. And that was something that we consciously tried to do, and it was quite straightforward. and that's an example of making the right steps. Public transport is also working towards those goals, renewable energy in local councils, zero waste target. There's actually a law being brought in, which I was told by a lady on the programme who is in waste, that in April next year, if you have over 10 employees, you have to have 4 bins that are different recycling bins. I think it's glass, plastics, waste, general waste, and then food. So that's coming out by law. So this isn't something that we can ignore and hope it doesn't change. It is changing. Also they're looking for increased transparency and reporting requirements. And it's really interesting because there's actually a company local to us which we use. They're a cleaning company. So if we ever have any Airbnbs, we use them. Oxfordshire-based company. All of their vans are electric, and they obviously wash usable items. So they're not one-use items. They wash hand towels, shower mats and things like that. So quite an economically advanced company. And when I went through this talk, I could actually see how that is a much more sustainable business model than their competitor, who isn't even thinking about this. So it's kind of like you need to start, not necessarily change the world and think about other things, but if we go on to the next slide, I've got a task that you could do with your team.
There's just wanted to say, there's things like B Corp, which is a lot of companies are looking to get involved in that. It's quite a rigorous process to go through, and that covers not just the environmental stuff, but the social governance side of ESG of your business.
Yeah, completely. So so if you're thinking, what is Jack on about? I cannot be bothered to think about these incremental changes. I don't like change, whatever you may be thinking. But what I would say, if you've got a fairly sized team, i.e. more than just yourself, this might be a useful exercise that you can do, and actually something that I want to do in our company reviews. Ben's not seen this yet. So it's called a quadrant of the impact effort chart, which sounds way too comprehensive for what your result is. But basically, you're analysing. You've got a linear chart. Bottom is low impact, high is high impact. So, for an example, relating it to a property for you, if you're putting solar on the roof, that's a high impact change. If you're changing LED lights, that's a high impact change. If you're potentially putting a draft proofing around a door, that's probably a low impact change for heating. So that's how you get it to your sort of high low impact. And then you've got across, is it the y-axis, I think, coming across the bottom way, if you're not x-axis one now. I mean, it doesn't really matter which way they go, as long as you know which way's high impact, low effort. But it goes from left to right, which is low effort, high effort. And then you've got your quick wins, you've got your major projects, you've got your fill-ins, and then you've got avoid or delegate at the bottom right. So this is a quick task. What you can do is basically draw it on a table, get Post-it notes, say to your team, how can we improve our sustainability on a project, or how can we improve our sustainability in the business? And that might be things that you might not have even thought about. So for an example, LED lights, or actually switching off computers when you leave, and something that you could be conscious of. And there are online calculators that you can use, and I've actually shared 2 links on here. So Planet Mark and S2E Climate Hub. And if you just Google like carbon footprint calculator for our business, you can actually do a calculation today, record it, put it on a Google Drive, date it, and then do all these changes and redo it in 6 months. And that is actually something you could use for marketing, for employment, and prove to, maybe if you are working in the public sector, to show them that you have actually made incremental changes and tracked that over the years. Because if you improve by 2% or 1% a year, you're improving more than you would have been improving if you didn't do this task. And I actually do see the world moving in that way. I do think we've got a bit of time. Obviously, it's not like EPC's changing and it was threatened 5 years and blah, blah, blah. This is 2050, so we do have time. But if you're not on it now, you really will be falling behind, and everyone else will be progressing way more than you. So use the calculators, have a bit of a think of what you could do. When we actually moved into our office estate that XP are in, is something like 7 residential properties and I think 7 offices. We actually had to pay direct to a bin provider to get a recycling bin, which absolutely disgusts me. And I'm not, a ridiculous eco warrior. I just think that it's actually so lazy to just put everything in one bin and it all goes to landfill. So we do pay extra for a recycling bin, but that's actually kind of just because I'm so used to it from being at home and that's the nature of it. Fortunately, we don't have any food waste because we just put it in the surveying office and it magically disappears. But it's definitely something to be thinking about going forward in your business.
Nice, very good.
Good. This one's cool. I actually really enjoyed this one. So this is basically a test that you can think to yourself about employees that you're employing. So I've sort of coined this getting the best out of your team matrix. Tons of matrices. I don't know why they're all called matrices, but anyway. So we have actually found in our company that is very difficult to get a balance, especially when you're young, hungry, growing, and you feel like everyone's doing a bit of everything. And it's even though we have our linear roles, everyone's super busy. So we've got two axes. So the y-axis, which is bottom to top, which I've been corrected before, is the psychological safety, which is how comfortable someone is to be talked to and challenged and worked through within your business. And then the other axis that we have is drive. Now, what you may find is if they don't feel that they can communicate and open and understand the job role enough, but they have good drive and good work ethic, they go into this anxiety zone where they don't feel comfortable about their knowledge and their abilities to see if they're doing the right thing. That's not really where you want to be. Obviously, if there's low drive and low psychological safety, they're not going to really be performing or driving much value into your business. Now, if we look at if they're high psychologically safe, but they're really comfortable, and I've actually not necessarily felt this in our business, but some days when there's a lot of people in the office, everyone's really happy and jolly, and I actually feel like we're not getting a lot of shit done. So I do tend to knuckle down in those situations, but that's called the comfort zone. And even though everyone's really happy and enjoying themselves, is it driving the best from the business? And fundamentally, that's exactly why you hire in the business. So what I really, really like about this table is you could easily call it, getting out of the comfort zone, which employees probably won't like, but we call it the learning performance zone or learning zone, where you actually push people to push themselves outside the psychological safety and push the barriers in the business, but also maintaining the high drive. And I think calling it the learning and also having high psychological safety so they feel that they can communicate will prevent them going into burnout, but it also means that you have a high pressure, high performance team without actually acknowledging, potentially going into a position where they don't know what they're doing, which is the anxiety zone, or equally into the comfort zone where they're obviously getting, a little bit comfortable and they really like, I'm working at 80% and I work at home on Fridays. Not that we really have anyone in our business of that sense, but it's just a really good way to monitor it. But I think the key thing there is actually calling it the learning zone, which is a really good metric to use, way to communicate to that to the employees around you.
Nice, like that one.
Yeah, good. This one's a good one. So this was a really simple one, and actually I think we've got one more after. So we had a talk from I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but anyway, he was recruited in to help the UK government talk about distributing vaccines, and he was lecturing us, American guy. And I was infatuated by his talk, and he was talking about global expansion, but he had two really good things that I took away with me. And he said that in any business you have challenges, and there are only two challenges. They're technical challenges where there's already expert knowledge to address the problem. And he said that once you acknowledge that it's a technical challenge, you can normally put that into someone in the team that's got that expert knowledge or got the time to deliver it. And then he said there's adaptable challenges, which is no existing expertise of how to solve the problem. And that then tends to be a more senior problem to be dealing with. And coincidentally, we've got a question coming on the last slide that I think this really touches on some of the things that will be answered in that question. So hang around for that question. But it's interesting that I believe that the sort of the strategic business owner is most commonly probably focusing a lot more on the adaptive challenges, because a member of the team, unless it's project specific, which then I'd still argue it might be a sort of a technical challenge, you're dealing with things that you might not have dealt with before, and it's how you then go about managing that challenge, outweighing the sort of risk reward or SWOT analysis of it, or what sort of crossroads you're at, and evaluating sort of time, quality, and cost. But I found it super interesting to think about a challenge that way, because have you ever been faced with a problem and actually go, I know exactly how to deal with this, or I don't, we need to think creatively? and actually boxed that in. So he had quite a macro view on everything. And actually the next slide, which is the same, sort of macro view, Ben, you can go to the next one, is exactly the same. He said, the best business owners have the ability to know when to zoom in and out. And when he said it, I was like, that's so obvious, but so true. And I often find that when I'm not zooming out, I'll be, I'll neglect things and drop, or you don't have full control, or you're not making the best decision. But he said it's in those situations when you're doing the day-to-day, you just take a step back from the day-to-day and zoom out and look at the bigger picture. A common phrase that this might be associated with is working in the business and on the business. But what he's saying is he's actually kind of removed it from that, because if you're a small firm, you might be working in the business and on the business constantly. But what he's saying is in particular decision-making scenarios and in particular sort of crossroads, you need to zoom out and zoom back in. So he's giving you the comfort that you can be in the business, and it's not, oh, I wish I could get out of the business, it's so draining. He's just saying you sometimes need to come out to come back in to make the right decision, which I thought was a really good one and an easy one to take away with.
Very good. Loads of learnings there. I mean, I'm looking forward to joining this next year if I can get on it this time round. But yeah, it sounds like there's so much stuff to learn, and it's good that you're then sharing that with all our listeners as well, because they're getting a free mini MBA off the back of.
Yeah, you're going to be at the top of the class when you do it, Ben.
Yeah, I already know it. Be regurgitating it. But yeah, solid stuff. Cool. On to the Q&A, which we had one from last week, which I had to cut things short. So I will be going through it this week. And the question was from Ashley. I think that's how you say it. How have you gone about deciding which elements of the business are critical for you to be involved with versus what you can delegate or outsource? That's a very, very high level question, I think, for entrepreneurs, business owners, managing directors. Delegation is such a hard task and hard skill set to learn, and it takes time to learn that. It's something that I know a lot of certainly small business owners really struggle with, but you aren't going to grow your business unless you can learn to delegate and remove sort of low value tasks from you, so that you can focus on the high value income generating type tasks that should be your responsibility as the leader, as the managing director, as the CEO of your business. So, Jack, I don't know if you've had any thoughts on answers to this.
Yeah, so I was just going to say I think it's really hard to learn to put time into things and delegate into a business if you were to buy a business, because you're sort of going in cold and you don't really know what you're doing and it's already operating. But the benefit you have if you're growing a company from scratch is you kind of do that as you do the business. Is you don't think, right, I want a team of 10 next week. You go, actually, that's really messy and not a good use of my time. My time's way better spent over here. I don't really enjoy it. Someone else would be better at it. You then build a job description of what the business needs. You then put it out to hire for that role and you make a hire. So that's a quite clinical division of work and delegating within the business. And then naturally you grow the business and you do more things and they do more things and you might hire more people, but you never think something doesn't come in the top of the business funnel and go, right, who deals with this one now? I'll take this one. It's my turn. You naturally build a way of working throughout the team. And then obviously you have structure, management, tasks, independence, responsibilities. We actually have a roles and responsibilities org chart, which we're happy to share if anyone wants to look at that. But you do sort of progressively grow with that. So actually, I wouldn't necessarily concern yourself too much with this until you're growing. What I would definitely say, though, is definitely higher skills that oppose yours or are lower value to your value. Typically, business owners tend to be the higher value generators, whether it's new business, strategic improvements, hiring, firing, whatever it may be. So you quite easily find other tasks for other people to do because you're the visionary and not necessarily always the delivery across the business. You kind of need the delivery people to sort of be in there. And we've actually talked about personality profiles, and typically dynamos, which Ben and I are as a personality profile, tend to be the entrepreneur, the very fast moving, quick learning, problem solving. But then also the delivery team are Brown, and most of our team are actually sort of bottom end of the table, where they're steels or I don't even remember what the bottom one is now. Is it
Tempo.
Tempo? It's Tempo.
Tempo.
Yeah, Tempo has helped sort of lead the business, and you might bring in a Blaze to sort of help the sales piece. So opposing tasks, don't stress about it too much, because you'll grow and learn and make mistakes and then improve them. And it's really important. Me and Rob, I can't even remember if me and Ben actually did. I think we did actually. We had a roles and responsibilities org chart, and I had one with Rob, where when we set up the businesses, we both knew what our roles and responsibilities were when we set out. Now that's completely adapted, and we've got tons of people that are doing various different things in the business too.
Yeah, I think this is what you were talking about. Yeah, this roles and responsibilities thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so on screen now, this is something that I'd implore everyone to do, and I spoke about this during the mastermind session at Property and Pigeons a couple of weeks ago, and people were really struggling to get sort of an understanding of how they delegate, how they grow as a business. And what Jack and I did early on, and you can take this away for your own businesses, is create some sort of responsibility chart like we've got on the screen. So for those that are listening and tuning in, effectively we've got different subsections of the business. So we've got our property development business, which comprises of the acquisitions, legal, finance, design, commercial, build, sales and marketing. Those are all the departments within that business. Got property management outside of that, and then that's for each project essentially. And then you've got the wider group function. So you've got group strategy. So that involves wider marketing, joint ventures, and investment procurement, capacity planning, client-based management, positioning, new products, culture. Those are all wider group strategy type pieces. And then you've got group support. So your IT, administration, accounting and finance, HR, legal and compliance, office management. And that forms a different section. Now, under each subsection that I've just spoken about, you start off by putting names. Now, at the start of a business, all of these names here would have been Jack or I. So, depending on which part of the business we're responsible for, it would have been Jack or it would have been Ben Richards. As we grow as a business, we brought in accounting and finance is now Tess. HR is now Tess. Legal and compliance is now Tess. I've got under the design section, I've got Tom, my project manager. We've got Christina coming in to help with the administration and marketing. So as the business grows, you can see where different people slot into those different positions within the business. And it helps to really structure how you think that, what you should be doing with this is thinking, where does the business need to go? And then you can work your way to it. Whereas a lot of people were finding themselves in a real tiz as to where do I start? Who do I need to hire next? What does this business look like as it grows? And doing something like this really, really helps. It doesn't necessarily help to necessarily delegate in the first instance, but delegation is something that you will learn. Sometimes you're forced into learning it because you just literally don't have enough time. So you have to find someone that comes in and takes some of the parts away from you. But my answer to your question in terms of what's critical for you to be involved with versus what you can delegate or outsource is understanding where your true skill set lies. So, if I'm going to a sales negotiation, I would want to delegate that to Jack because he's far better at that than I am. Whereas if it was going into a conversation with an architect or a planning officer, my skill set would be the best person to sort of have that conversation. So learning who you've got in your team, what their skill sets are, what your skill set is, and fundamentally you need to be doing the things that are generating the most income and the most value to your business. So focusing on those and delegating the lower value tasks that can be done by other people within your team. So doing invoicing, that is probably a £15 an hour task. Bookkeeping and invoicing, £15 an hour task. When you're at business ownership level, entrepreneurship level, your hourly rate is going to be far greater than that with the business and the sales and the sort of business GDP that you kind of grow. So you need to be doing tasks that are at your level that bring in most value at the top end, and then starting to look at what you can delegate lower down the chain to the rest of your team.
Yeah, hopefully. I was actually going to share an analogy on this, if you don't mind. So at school, I think it was on Wednesday mornings or Thursday mornings, after training, we would always have our coach print off the team for the Saturday game and put it on the notice board, and everyone would run down there to see who was a bench warmer and see who was on the team. And now the difference between what we've just shown you is, imagine you've got two teams competing on the same day against each other, and one team, they've clearly defined who the goalkeeper is, who the centre back is, who the defenders are, whether you're right wing, left wing, centre forward, or in the midfield. And then the other sheet is just 11 names, and it's not detailing who's playing where. You can almost understand that the team that have their allocated places, even if they're not better, are probably more likely to win because they're more organised. They know who's playing where. They understand where they're going to run on the field. Whereas the other team, you might get two people arguing in the centre field saying, well, I'm playing centre field because that's where I play. And the other person goes, well, coach didn't put you there. They put me there. And he goes, well, how do you know? So it's all about the organisation. And if everyone in that business knows what they're responsible for, so overarching task, and then the actual delivery of the task, you'll be way more efficient, and you will be actually getting pestered less by the team because they all know what they're doing.
Nice. Good. I like that. And on that note, I think it's probably the longest one we've done in a while. Lots of value hopefully in there from a design perspective, lots of value in there from a business perspective, learning from Goldman Sachs and their small business course. And we'll hopefully be back again next week at the normal time of 5 p.m. on a Friday instead of late night on a Friday night. But if you've got any questions, do drop them in the comments below. And until then, have a good weekend and see you next week. See ya. Bye.